Yo, what's up, y'all? Ruben Davis, future doc here. And it's been a little minute since I made a video. Officially done with my third year, and I just gotta say, third year won. All right, third year was a time, but I'm officially in the second block of my fourth year. And now I feel like I'm in a better place to make content. I'm a lot more confident on, my rotations, a little bit better balance. My shifts are still a little bit crazy, but, I'm a little bit better now. So it's a little bit easier to kind of get back into this. I thought I was going to make videos about every rotation, but yeah, like I said, third year won. But fortunately, I did honor a majority of my rotations, and I thought, why not make a video with sharing some tips about, how I was able to honor some of my rotations so that you can honor those rotations as well. All right, so that's pretty much what this video about. I'm gonna share some tips and tricks on how to honor all of your rotations. So let's get into it. Tip number one, and this is probably one that you'll hear, from a lot of different people, and it's basically kind of set your goals and talk to the residents the first day, right? Ask them, hey, how do med students usually integrate into the team? What are med student tasks that I should be doing? And you should be writing those down, noting when it's happening, right? And that kind of sets you up for success off the top because you know exactly what they're expecting from you. And then you can, and they might also ask you, like, hey, what are you hoping to get out of this rotation? And you can share some of those goals as well. And they can focus on some teaching and other various things while you're on the rotation. I've been in rotations where that didn't happen and things go terribly wrong, where they're expecting things of me, but nobody ever told me, I didn't ask. And so on the rotations where I did say, hey, what do med students usually do? In particular, third year med students, what do third year med students typically do on this rotation? How can I, be a part of the team and then, start to take on those roles and own those roles. And if you have a fellow med student on the rotation with you, y'all talk about it. Y'all talk about how to, split it up, share it, whatever it is. Like for my OB rotation, for example, we would see patients in triage. And so we, go back and forth with the other med student on and who would go see the patients in triage first, right? So it's really just about communication and making sure that you know what is expected of you during the rotation, right? And then that way that'll just set you up for success. You can start planning, you can start looking up whatever you need to look up and study and prepare for whatever those tasks are, all right? Leaning into that is take your time, ease into the rotation, right? Don't do too much right off the bat. Your first day and really your first week, but it's definitely your first couple days, your only goal is to learn the flow of the service. How do they do things? If you're on surgery and, there's a certain surgery that they do a lot, how do they set up for these surgeries, right? What ways can you get in to help set up? Is it setting up stirrups? Is it getting warm towels? Whatever it is, what is the flow? Is there certain labs that come in at a certain time that, they like to get and have for handoff? I know I mentioned my OB one, I don't know why, but it's just things that come to my mind. On my overnights for morning sign out, she wanted to have all the blood pressures for everybody on the floor. And so I would just have those written out at the same time every day and just hand them to her. Here you go. Here are all the blood pressures. It's something that takes off the resident's plate. If you can make the resident's life easy, then you're a great med student, right? Then that feels really good for the residents. You'll get a good review and that'll be honors in their minds, right? So easing into the service, right? That's basically tip number two. Not doing too much, taking your time, learning the flow. And then also part of that is not taking on too many patients and not taking on too many complex patients out the gate, right? You want to start off with some early wins, right? Don't take on internal medicine, your internal medicine rotation on your first time, unless you just got it like that. Don't feel the need to take on the patient with 20 comorbidities and all kinds of things and question marks going on your first day, right? That's going to be a lot. And if you do take that one, only take that one. Don't take other patients. But what I would recommend is you take a few slam dunk patients right on top, like one or two slam dunk patients first day, easy diagnoses or just easy management right? So that you can kind of get in the flow, that you can have an easy presentation to kind of ease into however the attending likes, right? And however, and as you're learning the flow of the service, because every service likes presentations a little bit differently. So you want to take your time and learn what's going on before you just gung-ho get out there and just start doing stuff. And then you start making mistakes and then you feel bad. And that just kind of turns into like a downward spiral of like, oh my God, I'm terrible in this rotation. And that's hard to bounce back from, right? We want to start off strong so that you don't have to bounce back. Obviously, you're going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen. We're learning and you should expect to make mistakes, but we want to mitigate those as much as possible and create an environment where you feel confident that you can go into these rotations and do the things that you need to do. Tip number 3 is around taking ownership of your patients and some of the ways that you can do that, because I didn't necessarily understand that immediately, when I started getting on my rotations. Like, what did that really mean? What does that involve? Because, this is my first time really doing stuff like this. I don't have a background around patient care. So this is my first time really being in a hospital setting this much, and in these settings. So some of the big things really is around communication, right? So when let's say you're on internal medicine or really any service, but you're taking care of patients, these are new patients to you, shift is changing over, just message the nurse, hey, anything happened overnight? What did they get in sign out? They can message you back those things that you can report back. Because, for example, on my pediatric rotation, we didn't pre-round, right? They told us not to pre-round. That wasn't expected of us. But how do you know what happened overnight if you don't pre-round? Like, yeah, you might get sign out, but the best way to do that is to message the nurse, say, hey, anything overnight? They might say no, or they might say, yeah, they were a little bit fussy, they were a little this, whatever, So message your nurse, be in communication with the nurses. And when you start that communication early, they'll know, hey, they'll just start reaching out to you about things that go on with your patients, right? Again, this is really important because, for example, on my surgery rotation, this is where I felt it the worst, where, especially as a third year student where you're not necessarily the first contact, the residents are getting information that you don't have. And if you have a resident who's not as communicative, they might not tell you something that a nurse or another out of service person told them about your patient, right? They might forget or what have you, might be innocent, but at the same time, it's like, you need that information, right? They getting messaged about your patient and then you present on rounds, but they didn't tell you this. And now you're saying something, blah, blah, blah. And then they be like, oh, actually, whatever the information is that you didn't get. And then you look stupid because they know something that you don't know, right? And it just feels bad, it looks bad. So, establishing that communication with your resident and as well as the nursing staff, PT, whatever it is, establishing that communication and reaching out to folks helps keep you in the loop so that when you're presenting and that when you're just trying to make decisions about your patient, you have all the information and you're not being left out of the loop, right? And that's one of the other reasons why you want to build that relationship with the residents, because they can make or break you in terms of like, if they're not communicating with you, and I've had residents like this who are just very standoffish, who don't update you about anything. Those are the worst. If you're like that, be better. Like, you need to be communicating, you need to be including the med students in things that are happening about their patients. And I've been on both sides where I have residents who would add me to chats with other people about my patient. When they're messaging them, they would add me so that I'm in the loop. And then I have other residents who just literally don't tell me anything, and they don't say anything until I'm presenting in front of the attending or the fellow or whatever on rounds. I'm like, that's slimy, bro. Don't do that. If you're like that, don't do that. Okay, that's just a little bit of my soapbox there. Okay. Also, like in the communication vein, doing some of the grunt work of calling the radiologist. Like, if you know your patient is due for a TTE or stress test or, a CT scan or whatever, and they haven't gotten it yet, call them. Hey, we put in this order yesterday. When could I expect them to go get this MRI, the CT, whatever it is? And then, follow up on some of those things. That's taking ownership of your patient, right? Making sure that things are getting done, circling back on the things y'all talk about on rounds, right? All those different things, pending orders. Okay. Here's one thing that I really enjoyed from my pediatric rotation that the attending was saying. She was like, try to write all of your notes before rounds, because more than likely the plan won't change that much on rounds. And even if it does, the resident can update your note once you send it off, right? But it's just a better workflow. And then part of that too is pending the orders. I don't know how every other institution works, but here, what we do is we're able to, submit orders, but then they just have to get signed off on by the resident or attending. And so, we can just put things in there and nothing happens until somebody signs off on them. So that's nice from the standpoint of when you present your plan, like, hey, I think we should get X lab, X imaging, whatever. It's like, if they say, yeah, that's a great idea. And then you're like, yeah, I already pinned the orders for you. So you don't, boom, all you got to do is click. And we can send them the orders as well. So like we can save and share it in Epic. But I know not everybody has Epic, so I'm not sure how that kind of flows. But that's just a great flow of, anticipating things. And that feels like managing, where it's like, oh, you thought about this plan, blah, blah, blah. And so that kind of also transitions me into my next tip of talk about everything with your resident beforehand. Whether it's your intern, I'll say depending on the year, the time of the year, if they're just starting out, the interns, we're all learning at a certain point. But, definitely if it's later in the year, talking to your junior and senior resident about everything before you present, if you can. Just say, hey, you mind if I chat about X patient, the plan, blah, blah, just talk about the plan. Like, hey, I think we should do X, Y, Z, right? Because more than likely, they'll help give you, because if, especially you're new to the service, they've been on the service for a while, they know the flow of things, they know some tests you might not know that you can do or whatever. They can help buffer your plan and make sure you think through your plan so that you look good on rounds. So my peds rotation was one of those rotations where I really did a good job of, before rounds, I'm talking to the resident, whoever, was assigned to that patient, I'm talking to them about every single patient. Like, hey, this is what I'm thinking we should do today. This is what I'm thinking about the plan, blah, blah. And they'll say, yeah, I think that's perfect. I was thinking the exact same thing. Or they might be like, I don't know about that. Or, hey, yeah, I was thinking about that. Plus, make sure you think about this. I was thinking maybe we could do about, right? They just giving you all this information and boom, you write it down. And then when I present it, the attending's like blown away. Like, oh, that's perfect. Yeah. No notes. Great job. Like, it's the best when you present and your attending's just like, great. And then we just go see, you know what I'm saying? Like, that feels perfect when they don't have any questions, any notes, because your presentation was so thorough, your plan was thought through and thorough. Like, I'm telling you, talk about everything with the resident before, if you can. Some structures might not allow you to do that. But as much as you can, talk to the resident, ask questions, present, practice if you need before rounds, right? Because then you'll look extremely good to the attending. Because even, let's say, the resident, they might, I doubt they would, but let's say they knock you a little bit for all the questions you ask, but then you present flawlessly to the attending, their voice matters a little bit more. Just a little bit more. If they say, yeah, they were outstanding. I just have a lot of notes written down, so I'm gonna just kind of just keep going through them. As far as like some of the ownership things, always do a physical exam, okay? No matter what, always do a physical exam. All right, I had a moment on internal medicine where me and the resident are in the room together, kind of asking questions. They do a real quick exam, but they don't feel the belly, right? They're moving fast. They're trying to see all their patients before we do table rounds. But I have a little bit more time because I don't have as many patients as them, right? So I do a, full thorough exam. Feeling the belly, I'm like, there's some suprapubic tenderness. So at table rounds, I present that there's suprapubic tenderness. The attending looks at the resident and is like, did you notice that? And they're like, I didn't appreciate that. And I'm like, yeah, because you didn't feel in their belly, but I did. And then when we went and rounded on that patient, the attending felt on their belly and was like, that is tender. Yeah, actually, yeah. So let's do all the things you said to do about that, look it up and find out they had a UTI, right? And so that would have gotten missed if I didn't do a full exam as well. So that's another thing about taking ownership of a patient. Just because the resident also has to do everything that you do after you, right? So don't feel like you shouldn't do things just because the resident is going to do it or the attendee is going to do it as well. No, one, you're learning. So you should be wanting to do everything anyway, just so you know what's normal, what's abnormal, so you can build up the, repository in your mind of sort of pathology. But also sometimes things slip through the cracks. And that's where med students can really shine, is where we're picking up those things that might have made it through. And that was one of those moments where it was like, wow, yeah. And so now I always, bare minimum, heart, lungs, belly. And then I might squeeze on the legs as well, you know, just to see if there's any, you know, swelling or whatever. But heart, lungs, belly, period. Always do a physical exam and a thorough physical exam. I have had attendings comment on, wow, I really appreciate that you always do a thorough exam and you present on it. I really appreciate that. Like I've had it commented on. I'm telling you, always do exam. Don't, you know, do it half, you know, do the things, and always obviously do the pertinent things, and always be thinking about that when you're going into a patient. What exam should I be doing? Make sure if like they have a neuro thing, make sure you're doing a neuro exam and you can present on it and trying to anticipate some of those things. Look up everything that they mention that you don't know, right? And just look up stuff in general. Because everybody looks up things. Attendings look up things, residents, fellows, whatever. So don't feel ashamed about looking up stuff. And it shows, and that's a part of medicine, research, looking it up. Like, oh, is this a thing? What are the numbers on this? What's the, you know, just look up stuff. Don't feel embarrassed about it. You know, because early on, I felt like I needed to know everything. And I felt a little bit like, oh, I hate that I have to look this up. But like literally everybody looks things up and it's okay. And you should. And I've noticed now, especially my fourth year, like, oh, they comment on it in my notes of like, yeah, the student is looking up evidence based off, you know, these type of things and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. They're just noting that the fact that I'm actually looking things up and trying to find evidence and resources and dosages of drugs and all that. And I'm confirming things based off the data and the research, right? That is important. That matters. And that's what you do. That is a part of medicine. So don't feel any type of way about it and look things up. If they mention something, like let's say another student is presenting on rounds and they mention something that you don't know, or the attending mentions something that you don't know, look it up. Just look it up. I have my phone on me all the time. I'm always looking up things. Attendings don't really be tripping about me being on my phone. I don't know about other institutions and other attendings. Sometimes there are, but just look stuff up so that you can be prepared, because it's literally came in clutch so much where somebody just said something. I was like, what's that? And I look it up real quick. And then they bring it back up later of like, yeah, we talked about this and on rounds. Let me bring this back up. Let me ask you a few questions. And you look so good when you can answer some of those questions, right? So just look up stuff all the time. Just keep looking up stuff. Be definitive, okay? Try not to be on the fence about your plan. Even if you are a little bit, rationale it through, right? Pick a side, because that looks a little bit better than saying, I don't know, we can do this, we can do that. No, pick a side. Say, I want to start them on antibiotics because XYZ. I want to get this CT scan because XYZ, right? Now, there may be moments where the attending's like, I don't know. And you might be like, I don't know. But still, pick a side, because the confidence that you can exude that way really does come off well. And it just feels different when you're talking and presenting and you have a confidence of like, yeah, I want to do this. And you're not like questioning everything you say. Now, that does take a little bit of time. Like, it took me a little bit of time to get there, to just be like, yeah, I want to do this, 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 and this. This is my differential. This is what I think is going on, blah, 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 right? Be very confident, even if you're wrong, because you can still learn with being wrong, but they still appreciate you for being confident in your answer and, you know, feeling knowledgeable. They're like, oh yeah, you have good knowledge, but you might have missed a little detail that might point you in a different direction, or let's just add something to your plan, right? So just be confident, right? We're students, we're still learning. Don't think you need to know everything. And attending shouldn't be expecting you to know everything. You should know stuff, but you shouldn't know everything. Otherwise, why are we here? Right? So just be confident and be definitive. And the last tip, I think, is probably the most important, is to get a system. Okay. You need a system that you go through every single time, with how you chart review, how you interview patients, making sure you're not missing questions, things, how you take your notes, and then how you present and think about your problems and plans, right? And that was something that I was, learning, that you learn as you go along. And, you might make one system, but realize like, oh, I need to add this to it. Oh, this is useless. I don't need that, right? And you just start developing your system as you go along. And originally, I started creating PDF templates for myself to make sure that I didn't miss certain things. I'd create like a review of system questions where I can just like circle, scratch off certain things to make sure I just ask certain questions that I wanted to make sure I asked, because I would forget sometimes. And then on rounds, for example, I know on surgery, I kept forgetting to make sure I wrote down my ins and outs. Just like with so many things happening and you're just learning, you're just not used to certain things. It's like so easy to miss stuff. And so you want to create a system as you make mistakes to make sure that you don't make them again. And so to that end, I actually developed an app. It's called DocPad. And it's a note-taking app that's basically allows you to, one, get rid of the piece of paper and to move to a more digital format, which I find a little bit quicker than typing. And I also have terrible handwriting, so this is a lot better for me. But it helps you create a system for yourself where I have note templates in there for different services that, you can also create custom templates as well. That just allowed me to be systematic and methodical and making sure that I'm not missing any information. There are other tabs in there where you can input certain pearls and things that people say on rounds that you don't want to forget about various things. If somebody teaches you a great point, you can just enter it in there and it'll save. You can also, there's like a problem and assessment sort of think through sheet of that asks you the various things. For example, one thing that we often forget is like nutrition, right? Make sure you're thinking about nutrition, make sure you're thinking about dispo, various things, right? And so I created that app. I made a whole video that you can find, I guess, here or somewhere up here, or link in the description, going through and demoing that app. So definitely check that out if you are in need of a system and you want a tool that can help you be successful on rounds. Appreciate y'all watching this video. I know it's been a long time. I'm going to try to put out more content. I want to talk about every clerkship that I've done and all the tips and lessons that I learned on every clerkship. So stay tuned for those. We're gonna be talking about some of my fourth year stuff, residency applications, applying to specialty. I'll talk about what specialty I picked. I haven't actually announced that yet and why I picked it and all the things. So more content to come. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Make sure you like this video, leave a comment down below if you found any of these tips helpful. If you've already been through your third year clerkships and you want to leave some tips for somebody else, you can do that as well. But subscribe to the channel, ring the bell if you want to continue to watch my videos like this. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Future Doc out.